Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. Once again, coming to you from Portland, Oregon, where I'm teaching at Portland State University's fabulous Center for Retail Leadership. The great American writer F. Scott Fitzgerald once said that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Well, I'm probably not the right guy to be disagreeing or taking issue with Fitzgerald, but I'd like to suggest that, in fact, the ability to hold two ideas and still function, two opposing ideas and still function, isn't necessarily just the mark of a first-rate intelligence. It ought to be the mark of being an adult. This occurs to me, quite frankly, because some of the reactions that I've seen lately to stories that have appeared on Morning Newsbeat that basically break people into different camps. I'll give you an example. The GMO labeling issue. Listen, I've always thought that GMO labeling strikes me as being a reasonable compromise between those who are pro-GMOs and those who are anti-GMOs. I think that I'm sort of agnostic on the issue, or have been. I'm sort of moving off the agnostic position to some degree because of some of the things I'm hearing and some of the things I'm seeing. But largely, I think that labeling, as somebody wrote to me the other day, labeling isn't condemning. Labeling is just informing, and it strikes me as being a reasonable compromise. But when I've written that, both here and elsewhere, I've gotten this enormous reaction from people, and it tends to be really into two camps, right? There's the pro-GMO camp that believes that people who are anti-GMOs are anti-science and anti-corporation and anti-profit, and then there are the people who are on the anti-GMO side who think that most of the people who are pro-GMOs are basically mad scientists and carnivorous businessmen who are hell-bent on world food domination. Okay, now listen, here's the deal. They both could be right about that, or they both could be wrong about that, but we don't get anywhere by staking out those positions. I think that it seems to me that you could actually say, whichever position you're taking, that the other side does have a legitimate point of view, and then you can work together towards figuring out what makes sense in terms of legitimate use of GMOs, selective use of GMOs, making sure that people who don't want to use GMOs in their food or don't want to have GMOs in their food, their positions are respected. I think you can take a respectful position and get things done and come to a reasonable compromise without all the name calling and all the staking out of positions and not being willing to listen. It seems to me the same thing could be said, for example, of the story that's taking place in Washington, D.C. right now, in which Walmart is basically at odds with the D.C. City Council because the D.C. City Council wants a living wage bill, which will mean that Walmart will have to pay its employees there when it opens stores more money than the minimum wage is for other retailers in the same market. And by the way, it's the same issue that comes when McDonald's got into its sort of little foray into financial planning for its employees, in which it basically said that, well, they can probably get by without having to spend any money for food and $20 a month on health insurance. I'm not sure what world they're living on. But, listen, I think that, again, the email tends to break down into Walmart's evil, and Walmart is exploiting the masses, and the masses are useless, and the masses are just takers, and if they have to work 90 hours a week to get by, that's fine. That's what America's all about. And in some ways, again, you stake out those two positions, and nothing gets done. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that Walmart has a point when it says we ought not be held to a different standard than other people who are in our same business. That's not as necessarily a competitive way to be. And by the way, we bring jobs to communities that need them, and we ought not be punished for that. I think that's a reasonable position. I also think it's a reasonable position to say that we have a certain amount of wage disparity in this country, that it is not a good thing for society and for culture when people who work 40, 50 hours a week cannot support their families, when they have full-time jobs. There's nothing wrong with taking a second job. I've worked plenty of them. But I think we have a problem when people at the lower end, people on the front lines, are being paid so much less than senior executives who are making fabulous salaries. I don't think it's good for the culture. I don't think it's good for creating a sustainable economic model. But again, if you only take the two positions, one of the two positions, nothing gets done. It's either Walmart's the evil oppressor or all DC politicians are hypocrites. Again, we ought to be able to talk in a sophisticated, mature way and say, okay, I understand the two positions, but how can we talk about a way to approaching the big issue that actually doesn't focus just on Walmart or the DC City Council, doesn't just focus on McDonald's or its employees, but really looks at the larger issue of wage disparity and say, what does this mean for us as a society, and where are we going down the road? And listen, this isn't all just a business trend. We all know that. We live in a world where it makes a lot more sense to demonize the opposing view in politics than it does to actually sit down and talk to the person with whom you disagree. That's the way things work. Compromise and reasonable discussion, those are seen as marks of personal weakness and some kind of ethical vulnerability, which, again, you get nothing done. It strikes me that, you can talk to people, you can try to reason these things through in a mature way, and you get a lot further down the road. You actually make progress as opposed to inhibiting progress. I think it was Aristotle who once said that it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And, that's okay. You can actually believe in your opinions, and you can talk to somebody who disagrees with you. Don't have to accept their positions, but can still work it through. It's not the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. It's just the mark of being an adult. And I quite frankly wish more people would begin to act like it. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning, and as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.